My name is Jerome. I'm a front-end web developer with focus on data visualization. The title of my presentation is HighCharts/HighMaps for Big Data Visualization. In my project, there are several goals I want to achieve. First, of course, I want to use HighCharts and HighMaps to visualize some data. And the sample data I pick is the median zone subset data. And I also want to demonstrate a simple end-to-end data visualization implementation. So I'll create a very simple backend server for data processing. I also want to explore many options in HighChart. And using these options, we can tweak the styles, the colors, the look and feel. So I want to explore how much I can achieve through this. There are a few components in my implementation. First, I'll create a web interface. That's where all the HighCharts and HighMaps will be located. And for this HighCharts and HighMaps, I will demonstrate how you can use that with minimal settings. So that will help you to get jump start with HighCharts. And at the backend side, I will create a very simple Python-based server to handle data processing. And after this, the frontend will be interacting with the backend with a REST API. So here's a very simple architecture graph of my implementation. Data and technology. The data set I'm using here is median zone subset. It contains about 10,000 records. The size is about 5 megabytes. For each zone, it contains a lot of information like title, artist, location. Originally, this information is stored as a HDF5 data, so you have to download HDF5 to retrieve it. For me to access the data easier, I wrote a Python script. So I save it as a small JSON file. This JSON file still has this 10,000 records, but only with relevant information I want. The technologies. On the backend side, on top of Python, I use a library called WebPy. With WebPy, I can create a simple web server and REST API, which UI will be using to interact with the backend. On the front-end side, AngularJS is a very popular contemporary JavaScript library. It has many advantages. And HighChart HighMaps are the center of this project. Bootstrap helps us to lay out the whole page and also make the page responsive so that we don't need to write different CSS style sheets to handle different devices. Backend server and REST API. So I wrote a Python-based web server. The purpose of this web server is to access the songs.json. So if we look at the data in songs.json, each object in this huge array is a song. And we got a bunch of information about the song, like title, artist name, year, artist location. So our goal is that with this Python script, we can do some post-processing of the data so that when the UI get the data, we will not get 10,000 records at once, but we'll get some post-processed data. I designed a few endpoints to provide various post-processed data. For example, if I go to this endpoint, get histogram, duration 30, I'll get the histogram based on the field of song duration, and the number of bins is 30. So that when I get the response from this REST endpoint, I'll get an array of 30 objects, and each of them will tell me the count, the max and min of that bin. So I create a few REST endpoints to provide data for different charts in this application. Now let's move away from backend server and look at how we construct the front-end web interface. We'll start this application as a basic Angular application. So we'll have two files here. In index.html, you can see we specify a bunch of links to obtain required resource. And also there's an app.js. So if we look at the body element, we specify the app name and the app controller. And that points to the module name and the controller name in app.js, which means as I load this app, this whole body element will be controlled by this main controller. The next step is to create an Angular directive. Directive is a function that runs as an HTML element is loaded. It gives us access to the element in Angular. So let's look at index.html. In the body section, I add a div and also add line chart as an attribute to that div. Corresponding to this, in app.js, I create a directive called line chart, which means every time when this div is loaded, we'll execute this function. And with this, we can easily manipulate this div and create a HighChart in this div. And the next thing I'm gonna do here is inside that directive, as soon as this div is loaded, I want to send a GET request to the endpoint and get the data I want. So that's one of the endpoints I created earlier in the backend server. Now let's create our first HighChart. I will show how you can use minimal settings required to create a HighChart. So we send out this request to get our data. So the data we are getting is the average tempo of songs of each year. So you can expect that we get the average tempo for the year of 1926, 1927, and so on and so forth. In the callback function, after we get the data, we do some basic cleanup. And I want to retrieve two arrays. The first array categories are all the years I got from this REST endpoint. And the values are the average tempos from these years. And then I can create our first HighChart. It's very simple. You simply need to pass a huge object into the function. In this object, you can specify some basic options like title, x-axis, y-axis, series, and also want to disable the credits just to make the chart look better. And very easily, we can get this chart tempo over years. I use a line chart to visualize the numbers. And we can get the tempo of each year and see the trend over years. Now, if you go to your browser and run the app, we can see all the default styles, colors, and behavior of this chart. By default, this chart will occupy the default width of your page. And when hover over, we'll see some tooltip. Now, after we have created our first chart, we want to create more charts. HighCharts support many other chart types. So in addition to line chart, you can also do bar chart, pie chart, scatter plot, and many other charts. We'll follow the same practice. We add several other divs. In each div, we specify the name of the directive the div should be connected with. And inside the directive, in this code snippet, I'm showing the content inside the div of bar chart. We can specify similar options. One thing you may notice, for different chart types, you may need to specify different options. For example, here, in order to do vertical bar chart, we actually need to specify chart type and columns. Other charts require different options. You can find all these details on HighChart official website and their demos. Now, if we look at app.js, we can see 4 directives here. Each directive is created for one chart. The second chart is a bar chart, and we're getting a histogram based on the field of duration. And then we also want to find the top 30 places where songs are produced using a pie chart. Also using a scatter plot to draw the loudness and the tempo of the top 100 hottest songs. And then let's go to the app. We run this app in the browser, and now we can see 4 charts. So everything is rendered by the default style. So still you can see each chart still occupies the full width of the page. So now we're able to see all the chart, but actually I'm not satisfied with the layout. I want to improve the layout. Now let's improve the layout with Bootstrap. Bootstrap has many good CSS classes, and we can take advantage of these classes to arrange elements in our app. What's even better is Bootstrap makes your app responsive so you don't have to provide different style sheets for different devices. Now let's look at how we can use Bootstrap to improve the page. Directly under body, we add a big div and use the class name container. Inside the container, we want to create two sections. The top section we want to use as the page header. That's where we can put the title of the page. And the lower section, that's where we're gonna put all the charts. Because I want to arrange our charts in columns. So first I use a class called row, and everything inside the row with this different column classes will be arranged properly inside the row. After those changes, let's go to our application in browser again, refresh it. Alright, now we can see the layout is much nicer. 4 charts are placed in 2 columns, and everything, there's appropriate spacing and indentation and padding between different elements. We can also see that now the page is responsive as you change the size of your browser. So now the layout looks much nicer, but still I can see many things we can improve on this page. For example, if I hover over this line chart, it's nice to have tooltip, but the numbers are not really readable because we are not controlling the number of decimal places we're showing here. And also on this bar chart, this is a histogram, so I want to make each bar wider to make it more like a histogram. And one problem with our scatter plot is that although we have tooltip, but the numbers are not meaningful to us. We want to improve this. To make improvement on this, we can use other HighChart options. For tooltip, there are 2 things we can use. First thing is called point format. It allows you to specify an HTML template. So you can use this to specify what you want to show in the tooltip. And the most important thing here is you can use this syntax to specify how many decimal places you will actually want to show with a number. And for more complicated tooltip, we can use point formatter. That will allow us to pass a function. So for the scatter plot, I want to display more details for each zone. So I'm taking advantage of this to bring more information into the tooltip of the chart. And for color, you can specify an array of colors. And also I can tweak the point padding value in series to change the width of the bar chart. And of course there are other options. Now let's go to our app again, refresh it. Alright, now we can see new colors, and we now have control over the number of decimal places we are showing. And more complicated tooltip are there to show us more details about each zone. HighMaps. HighMaps is a HighCharts plugin for geographic data visualization. In other words, it makes maps. Let's look at the code. To create a HighMap, it's not much different from creating a HighChart. But one thing I want to point out is in the data series part. We need 2 data series. The first, we get the boundaries of all the countries in the world as a reference on the map. And then for the locations of zones, we map them by geographic locations. Then we'll see a map like this. When you hover over geographic location, you'll get more details about each zone. Now, I want to close this presentation with just one message. Overall, I think HighChart is a good library for front-end data visualization, but just keep in mind that there's no way for you to visualize millions of records on a browser-based app, so still you need good integration with the backend and some other data processing tools in order for you to bring out meaningful and clear information on the front end. This is my presentation. Thank you for your listening.